We've got a great presentation lined up for you today, and I'll be glad to start handing things over to Daniel Kalmerett, who's the CEO of Dedicon, and Mike Contreras, who is the Managing Director at the Department of Energy for the Slingshot Catalyst Program. And don't worry, there will be an opportunity for the live Q&A once we finished our initial conversation. So in a moment here, I'll begin our questions, but we've gathered a few of them in advance, but I just wanted to let you know that I will be monitoring the questions feed as we go, as well as at the end during the live Q&A. So if it's appropriate and if it helps enhance the conversation, I can find a moment, I will try and interject that question in. But we will have that dedicated 15 minutes for all of your Q&As at the end. I also wanted to let everyone know that we are recording this webinar, so it will be available after the event is over if anybody wants to share it. We'll send out notice to everyone who registered with a link so that they can find it online. And of course, if you have any questions about IdeaScale or today's presentation, you can forward them to me. Some of our speakers have some slides which we'll be jumping around between. If we're done with those slides, just so everybody has some context, we have some highlighted companies who've been very innovative running in the background there, and I'm glad to answer questions about those offline as well. But in the meantime, I'm going to let Daniel and Mike start introducing themselves. Daniel, do you want to get us started?
Sure, absolutely. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Kalmerett. I'm CEO of Dedicon, which is a consultancy, global consultancy, about 1,000 people. And my team here in North America focuses strongly on innovation management. So we help large and small organizations becoming more innovative. And we basically touch any area from processes to culture to people to idea scouting, finding the right innovations, innovation strategies, down to technology. What kind of basis do you need to be more successful? And yeah, have a team of about 25 people here in the Bay Area. And with that team, we serve basically clients in the US and globally.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you. Mike, do you want to tell us about you and maybe the Slingshot program too?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Contreras. I help run the Slingshot Catalyst program. We're really an accelerator-like program where we try to fund promising solar software energy startups. So we are a fund of about $5 million. We currently kicked off our first round in May. We're looking to send a batch of up to 20 teams to prototyping so they can prove out some of their ideas. A little bit about Slingshot. Slingshot is an initiative sponsored by the Department of Energy to drive down the cost of solar energy so it's cost competitive with traditional forms of energy generation. So we're primarily looking at cost reduction so that we can spur widespread adoption of solar technologies.
That's awesome. What a great program. And I love that you've already started prototyping or you've started funding some of those ideas. I don't know if you've started prototyping, but it's excellent to hear. I guess
yeah, we're about to announce on the 19th. We'll announce who goes on to prototyping. So more about that later.
So I guess the question that we wanted to start with for both of you, maybe we can go Daniel first and then Mike again. What does the term sustainable innovation mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So sustainable innovation to me, and I think you'll hear all kinds of different responses to that. But to me, this is really about building an innovation ecosystem for the long term, which is something that basically is able to survive economic cycles, ups and downs, and is basically able to churn out interesting, innovative products, services on an ongoing basis. That doesn't mean on a monthly basis or annual basis, but it means on a regular basis. This ecosystem, either ecosystem or group or company or entity, is able to churn out innovations. And that in the end then is strongly interrelated with a number of different things, starting from people, culture, incentive mechanisms for the parties participating in this ecosystem, down to processes, collaboration efforts, and of course also one important point is investment priorities. So where does the ecosystem or the company put its money, and how much time does it give these innovation ecosystems to grow?
Interesting. I like that resources is one of the considerations when you think about sustainable innovation. How much do you have to give
Totally,
to
yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we see a lot with large enterprises. Not jumping into this right now, but I think the thing about large corporates we see a lot is impatience. So you put some money in and you want some feedback or result in 1 year, and you want dramatic result within 1 year, and it just doesn't work, right? I think innovation you can compare very much to how the venture world works as well. You put money in, you wait for 5 years, and maybe in 7, 8 years you see the real return, right? And if you have that perspective, you tend to be much more successful than if you just put money in and expect radical new things like 1 or 2 years after.
Yeah. Mike, what about you? What does sustainable innovation mean to you?
Yeah, I think Daniel really captured a lot of like the ecosystem points and how we can impact that ecosystem. I think what I would add is for us, especially on the government side, often it's difficult for us to reach constituents. So this idea of sustainable innovation gives us a backdrop and an opportunity to create an open and increasing pool of ideas, directly from people, individuals. That's unique for us, and we were really trying to leverage that with the Catalyst program. I think particularly for solar, it enables us to find the pain points for the industry, and do that as an evolving fashion, sustainably. As the industry develops, it's quite new. We're only about 1% of total power on the grid. As it develops, new problems arise, and we hope to capitalize and basically depict that evolution through feedback from individuals.
Next. Daniel, can you give us an example of sustainable innovation that you've been involved with?
Yeah, absolutely. I probably quote just one of the classic large successful engagements we have done, which basically involved all of the things I just explained before. So we basically started off there, and maybe you can jump on the deck that I shared with you to page number 5.
All right.
4 or 5. Here we go. Yeah.
Yep.
There we go. That's great. Yeah. So we started off basically with finding out the areas of innovation where this company actually is able to innovate. And I think you cannot believe how many mistakes are made in focusing on the right targets, right? Where can I really compete and where can I be innovative? Because I do have the resources, the position, sales channels. I mean, companies make so unbelievably many mistakes in finding the areas where they can compete. They always overestimate new markets, new verticals, and their strength in certain areas which are maybe not adjacent but a little bit further distant to their core business. So shaping the strategy, I think, is super important for even being able to generate sustainable innovation. And then what usually next starts, which is very much also tied into the IdeaScale product and platform, is the idea, where do ideas come from? And this is kind of the model we've built, and I think it very much resonates with you guys as well, of internal and external sourcing of ideas and where it can come from, right? All over the place, from partners, from internal employees, from science or external academia networks, crowdsourcing could be a source as well. So you want to then basically build up the channels to be able to actually find the right innovations and then basically assess them. And on the next slide, if you jump to slide number 6, you would see something that helps the company figure out which areas are relevant. So you want to define your areas that you want to innovate in, and this is just for one large communications group. We've done that globally, where they said these are the areas where we need and want to grow, and you want to know what you do, right? If you look at Google and the innovations they had in the very beginning, there was too much and a lack of focus, right? And what happened then about 3-4 years ago is that Google said, yes, we allow everybody to invest a fifth day in innovation, but in these 5 to 8 innovation areas. So you do want to know where you shoot at and where you aim at, right? And that's kind of what you want to do. So you want to have this kind of radar that maybe helps you to define the areas where you say, this is where we have strength, any kind of strength, strategic, technology, channel strength, and that's why we feel we can innovate in these areas. And that's what you want to have as well, to be able to build sustainable innovation. And maybe jumping to the next slide after this one, then you want a process, which is super important. So you want to be able to source, that we just looked at, to collect these ideas and all the different innovations in maybe one central area. Sometimes it's decentralized depending on what makes sense in each context. And then you want to have a very rigorous selection process and figuring out which areas do I really touch and which areas do I really engage in which ones I don't, right? Followed by maybe an assessment, should I really do this? And then you execute. But you want a process standardized, semi-standardized, that helps you basically channeling things through a certain entity and having certain decision criteria that you define up front, right? Because some people get pretty emotional when they see things, get personally excited, but it really helps to define the criteria before and then to some extent, to 80%, stick to them, right? You always want to have some room for exceptions, but I think once you've defined the areas you want to be in and the minimum criteria you need to be able to invest, you should actually stick to these and only change them maybe let's say after half a year or after a year, but not too much moving forth and back. That's very important. And let's maybe jump to the last slide after this one. Yeah, and that's the one that I mentioned in the very beginning. Basically, you want to focus on areas where you either have a commercial leverage or an organizational leverage. I think that's very important. I think many times incremental innovation already happens within the organization. There's a product group that's just kind of doing another product iteration. There's a certain technology that just gets upgraded faster, more efficient. But I think what many of these innovation groups do is they focus on areas where the company right now doesn't already have a large organizational leverage, meaning people that can do that like tomorrow, or a commercial leverage, meaning either the funding, the resources, the money to actually do it, or the channels. And these are the areas where you have small plants that you want to grow, and these are the areas that you want to actually build step by step to develop sustainable innovations.
And that's interesting because like all of those different aspects and steps in the process introduce enormous challenges therein, right? Communications challenges to build up those networks, and objectives challenges, trying to define what's good for your organization. So it's a very in-depth process, it seems.
Very true, and I think the longer the company already has an R&D kind of DNA, the, the better. We do work with a lot of companies that have been, I would argue, maybe some kind of utility before. So they were either government-owned or they were kind of in a monopoly situation where they didn't even have competition. And if these entities now become, or if the market opens up and they instantly have to become innovative, that can be an amazingly painful and long-term process. So I would argue for many of the companies that have been in kind of monopoly situations, it takes them 10 years to really become competitive.
Wow.
And anything else is maybe exaggerated. I mean, they might be competitive in some smaller areas, but in some areas it can be like that. And if you have a company that already has a very healthy DNA, a research DNA, many years of churning out innovations, and now the market is just flipping into another area, these companies tend to adapt much faster. So for them, it's more like a 2-3 year process. But for companies that started from the beginning and say, no, I have to actually become innovative, and before I haven't, that's a 10-year process, 7 to 10 year process.
Wow.
For large companies, we're speaking 20 to 100 billion revenues, right? So the smaller the entity as well, the easier this is to implement. So.
Mike, do you want to walk us through Slingshot Catalyst? I'll switch back over to the PowerPoint here.
Yeah, I'm happy to. For the record, I'm not actually able to see the slides on my computer, so I can kind of step through, and then I'll just tell you to step through the next slide. So,
okay.
Just if we can just go to the intro one, the Catalyst logo.
Got it.
And then I can kind of give a little bit of context. So, I mean, just a little bit about myself. Prior to coming to the DOE, I was in the aerospace industry. I worked for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, working on robotic Mars missions. And so innovation is kind of a new area for me, but in the spirit of innovation, I came to it with really no preconceived notions or apprehensions, right? I was, I guess, innovative about being innovative. So I think what we did when we first got to Slingshot is we started looking at what DOE had already done in the space of innovation in terms of ideation, crowdsourcing efforts such as these. And we saw that we were successful in doing ideation through the American Energy Data Challenge. It was also a contest run and currently running on the IdeaScale platform. We had also made some forays into clean energy business plan competitions. We have a national clean energy business plan competition. It's kind of like American Idol, if you will. Regions, people compete at the regional level for the best business plan in clean tech. And then the best of those regions actually compete in Washington, D.C. for a top prize. And then finally, we had also had some success with hackathons. So we had thrown some apps for energy hackathons in different regions. So all these were kind of isolated instances of leveraging the crowd and taking the best ideas from a group of people. So what we noticed with the Catalyst was that there needed to be a way to integrate all these wonderful success stories into a process. So to take an idea, a raw idea, and bring it to implementation through these kind of separate processes, that was really our mission with Catalyst. So just a little bit about the solar industry. If you step to the next slide, it should be the explosive solar growth slide. Yeah, pretty much a couple numbers just to show the market opportunity for solar, which drives a lot of the investment thesis. Basically, in 2013, this is U.S. market numbers. There was about 5 gigawatts deployed, resulting in about $13.7 billion in revenue. They estimate in about 10 years the amount of capital, and it's VC capital as well as government investment, is going to be about $40.7 billion. And currently, the solar industry services about 1.2 million customers. That's on par with the city of Dallas, Texas, if you will. If we move on to the next slide, what's interesting about solar in particular, as opposed to other renewable energy plays, say wind, nuclear, or even natural gas, is this opportunity to reach out and touch the individual consumer. Solar can be installed in the residential market as well as utility and commercial.
Right.
So SIA did a little experiment with this just to show how strong the peer effects can be in those who choose to adopt solar. They went ahead and created this kind of badge, this I Like Solar app that you could put on your Facebook profile. And in the process, so basically if you had solar, you could put this banner up, and then basically Facebook was able to kind of crunch some data. And they found that roughly half of all Facebook users know someone who has solar on their home. So it's pretty interesting. But if you go to the next slide, if you think with that type of consumption of solar by your peers, the adoption would be even greater, right? But as this slide says, we have some real challenges with adoption. Currently, there are solar soft costs, so these are non-hardware costs related to things like permitting, customer acquisition, financing, monitoring. Basically, they're non-hardware costs that make up 64% of the total price of a residential system. So just to give you some numbers, if you install a system on your home, let's say it costs $5,000, roughly $3,200 will go to non-hardware costs. So if you think about it, it could be perceived as kind of an invisible tax on the industry. So our goal is to encourage adoption. So we got to really reduce these 64% soft costs. And the way we plan to do that is by using and leveraging software, data, automation, and algorithmic solutions. So that's the kind of investment space that the Catalyst is playing in. And the reason why we're using platforms like IdeaScale and crowdsourcing efforts is because of the next slide. We're looking for synergies. We're looking not only to encourage new entrants into the space, but we're looking to leverage the strengths of hackers, creatives, software developers, business students. We're looking to create a dynamic effect amongst different communities of people to help solve the problems of the solar industry. So if you go to the next slide, the way we catalyze this reaction And the way we mash this all up is we leverage online platforms. Currently, we have a little over 5,000 members in our network. So those are individuals who've activated their email address, and that's currently growing. So if you were to navigate to catalyst.energy.gov right now, you can check out all the problems that we've crowdsourced since starting, and then you can also check out some of the business solutions that have been proposed. So I'll go into a little bit deeper the structure which we've outlined, which integrates all these different pieces on the next slide. So this slide is the Catalyst unboxing. Right now should be displayed the ideation contest top bar, and basically that's what we kicked off in May. We basically blasted our networks. We have about 25,000 or so folks who receive our Slingshot newsletter. So our traditional stakeholder group has been kind of PV hardware researchers. We also have a fair amount of utility folks in that group, consumers, financiers, and basically the solar community at large. And we asked them, what are the pain points? What are the capabilities and features that you wished you had? And they overwhelmingly responded. I mean, we got like 140 responses, close to, in less than 30 days.
Wow.
And then what we did is we had people vote on those and comment on those problem statements, further refining them, offering their feedback, maybe saying, hey, this is a real issue, or hey, so-and-so is currently combating this problem. So there was a lot of great exchange going on. And what we did is we tried to stratify those ideas, or those problem statements, so that people in the next phase could propose business solutions to those problem statements. So if you hit the enter or advance button, you'll see that right now we're currently closing out the business innovation contest. And this is where we're going to fund up to 20 folks who propose a business solution to one of the problem statements that we sourced. We'll fund them up to $25K to work with Topcoder to develop their software prototype. Now, Topcoder is a community, for those who aren't familiar with it, of up to 700,000 software developers. And this platform discretizes or breaks up a software development process into a series of sub-contests. And they have these 700,000 software developers compete on each phase of these sub-contests that will advance a software development project through completion. So now we don't want a full-scale development. We just want something, a rough prototype that these folks who win this funding can actually display and demo at the end of the prototyping phase. So if you hit enter again, you'll see that those up to 20 finalists will go through a prototyping phase. And at the end of this prototyping phase, which will be in May, they're going to demo the functionality and features. They're also going to submit an execution strategy, which will propose some metrics of where they think they'll be at in 6 months. And based on those two things, we'll award them with seed capital. And the seed capital in the amount of $30,000. If you hit enter again, you'll see that at that point in time, they'll go into an incubation phase where up to 5 of those folks, as I mentioned, will receive seed capital. We'll check back with them in 6 months. If they hit their metrics to a reasonable degree, we'll give them an additional $70K. So 5 of those 20 prototyping finalists will receive $100K in non-dilutive seed capital. And if you hit the advance button again, that shows the demarcation of where we're at in the process. So we're always looking for fresh ideas. And in the theme or spirit of sustainable innovation, we're planning on relaunching the ideation round at Demo Day in May. So we plan to do this cyclically, currently refreshing the ideas and then building more products round after round, because our goal is to create competition, encourage new entrants, and to drive down those soft costs. So just to give you guys a little bit of a feel for what people are proposing, you can advance to the next slide, and you'll see some of the problem solution fits that have been created. So the first one in the upper left-hand corner is an interesting idea to create a Zillow-type functionality for solar. So a way to assess the economic viability of that solar asset on your home. This comes into question a lot of times at the resale of a home. Nobody really knows the value that solar system poses to that real estate asset. So that was proposed not by the people who actually proposed the solution. So some individual proposed this would be a great to have. And then a group composed the team Heliomap, and they proposed kind of a mock-up software solution to do precisely this. So they're currently being reviewed by a set of external judges, but basically a video pitch that answers this and some links or statements of online CVs or online qualifications is all these folks need to be considered for prototype funding. The second solution, and these are just kind of a random sampling of what's up there, is the solar endowment. And basically this idea is one we hadn't considered previously, but came from the crowd, is the idea that there are folks looking to invest in renewable assets, and primarily renewable assets, but there isn't really a mechanism to aggregate those interested in this type of financial asset class. So the folks at Window Street Financial in the video at the right, they proposed a solution. It's basically two guys, I believe they're MBA students out of Berkeley, and displaying their Movember mustaches, make a convincing case as to how they could do this using software, data, and automation. So that's just kind of a quick update as to where we're at. I included a final slide there just in case we had any questions. But yeah, I mean, pretty much we are definitely buying into the sustainable innovation theory, and you know, we're hoping to run this until, you know, we see the impact, which is really cost-driven, that is conducive for widespread adoption.
You know, you bring up a question I have, which is for something like solar, which you said has this benefit of having like a direct-to-consumer touch point where you can actually see how it connects to people who are using it. Does that make the crowdsourcing aspect easier?
Yeah, I think you know, one thing with so we operate under prize authority, which is how we're able to do this in a federal government setting, and this prize authority is a bit of a innovation in the government, and it's a bit of a revolution, if you will, but it allows us to, you know, award directly individuals. So it's a great fit for what we're trying to do with a sometimes retail product, right? So we have an audience that is willing to propose ideas, who knows the pain points, and we can reward them for doing so. So it's kind of the technology is a perfect fit for innovation and crowdsourcing.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about sort of what are some of the key communications components that are part of a continuous innovation environment. Dan, you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I think we touched on that before as well. So I think the core point is you want to be able to address all of the stakeholders within such a initiative, and that obviously is first of all the team and communication within a team, very important. It goes out to any potential customer or customers this innovation is targeted towards. If you are a larger group, I think it is super important to have internal communication towards the sponsors or the budget owners, let's say, that they also need to be aligned. So in general, it needs to be a very open and transparent communication process that basically touches all of the different entities, from the group itself doing the innovation to any surrounding stakeholder. And you basically want to have an ongoing communication flow that reaches all of the stakeholders with kind of their necessary information, amount of information they need to have. So not everybody needs exactly the same information, but you want the communication to be basically targeted to each of the stakeholders and customized to each of the stakeholders.
What about you, Mike? Do you have some ideas about what the key communications components are for your program?
Yeah, that was one of the parts that was that's definitely a lesson learned for us, and we tried a lot of really innovative things, at least from a government setting. So I think we believe that, you know, if you're going to go viral, right, which we certainly did not do, I mean, but if you're going to go viral in terms of traction sense, you really need to look at, you know, a combination of digital networks as well as in-person networks. So we tried to leverage our digital outreach with in-person engagement. So we actually scheduled a roadshow where we had a few anchor events where we co-sponsored these anchor events. In addition to these anchor events, we also targeted local accelerators in the area and did a short workshop style program. We called it a jamathon, where we presented some of the problems and we got people thinking about how they would solve them. And actually, at the end of that session, the jamathon, they would pitch, and we'd allow the peers to provide feedback. So given that type of workshop style setting, they could use a lot of that as groundwork to prepare their applications. So we were able to get the brand out there, and then combine that with a strong social media strategy to drive numbers of registrants to the platform. So definitely a combination of in-person engagement as well as the social and digital media.
All right. We've got this question here that I think has kind of a few different parts, but let's start broadly with what role does technology play in sustainable innovation? Do you want to start, Daniel?
Okay, so yeah, as you mentioned already, pretty broad question. So it touches a lot of different areas. I mean, first of all, obviously, you might have technology that you actually use to actually build sustainable, innovative products. So the technology itself is part of that innovation or innovative product that you launch. But on the other hand, what you also will have is you'll have a certain innovation process, which we discussed before, and the companies that are very successful are the ones that are able to kind of bake or build pieces of that DNA and processes into a very efficient software mechanism. So it automizes certain processes, it brings transparency and speed and many other factors to the game. So you basically want to find out what your core DNA is, and you want to then be able to build important pieces of it into a software ecosystem. Not everything will be built into software, but I think if you're able to bake 50 to 70% of what you do around innovation into sustainable and reliable software infrastructure, you're at a very, very good point. And technology there basically is all over the place, right? If you want to aggregate information, rate and collaborate, I mean, you name it, any step in that innovation process should be infused by a certain amount of technology to accelerate it and improve it.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, specifically for Catalyst, technology and particularly IdeaScale really does about three things for us. One is scale, the other one is access, control, and permissions, and then finally, allowing members of the ecosystem to play different roles in the community. So, obviously, we're trying to reach a lot of people, and we're trying to create a channel by which we can communicate with them, and sustainable innovation does that.
We had an interesting question come here in the questions feed along those lines, asking about how do you deal with game-changing technologies that enter into the equation? So, for example, in the solar power example, a solar company might pursue a line of innovation based on a particular technology at the time, but then what if a vastly more efficient solar cell was developed? How do you pivot to meet that new technology in an ongoing sustainable innovation program?
Yeah, game-changing technology, we're always looking for it. We're always looking for disruptive approaches. I would kind of balance that by saying that since we are Sunshot, we have multiple metrics that we're looking at. Technology metrics are very important for us as well. We also have the cost piece, and the adoption piece. So we look at multiple factors. Catalyst in particular is probably looking at lower barrier technology investments, things with a rapid time to market and a low cost for prototyping. But yes, I mean, we're always looking for maximum ROI on our investments.
Well, so we also talked about objectives earlier in the conversation with you, Daniel, and how important it is to sort of align these programs to particular goals and particular emphases within an organization. So are there objectives that are unique to sustainable innovation?
I would argue the core components, if it is a sustainable innovation initiative, is the focus on mid to long term, what I mentioned before. So there's a lot of incremental innovation, which is kind of um, already given, and any company that tries to survive more than 10 to 20 years is doing that, just adopting new trends and making them relevant for their business. But something sustaining that also has a differentiated proposition in the market needs to have funding and needs to have a mid to long term focus. And I think that's the big difference. Um, and that's something that not every company can actually always do, right? Because you need to have the money to fund it, right? People always say it's easy to be Apple or Google because these guys have so much money they can have a 20-year innovation roadmap, right? And many companies in distressed industries are not able to do that. But you want to be able to have a critical amount of funding and timing, right? And so I think, as I mentioned before, 5 to 7 years of time before you see really big impact is something you should actually focus on, and everything else mostly unrealistic.
Well, we're getting down to the Q&A portion of the presentation. So maybe the question that I would like to ask both of you before we change to that is, what do you think sustainable innovation is going to look like in the future? Maybe for the programs that you've both worked with, but also maybe in general. Daniel, why don't you start?
Okay, so looking forward, I think the big thing that we will all see is that the processes around innovation ecosystems will become faster and faster. And I think so the tools and methodologies we use going forward will need to be implemented quicker, will need to be implemented more in an agile fashion. So we'll see that basically the whole um, turnaround of these ecosystems is just very, very quick. So you want to be able to be fast, and you want to be able to be in an ecosystem that can accelerate. I think that's very, very important. If you just look at the technology space and look at tech platforms, let's say an upgrade of an OS, for example, with Microsoft. We're down to Google Android now, where you have upgrades probably every 3 months. Down to platforms, Twitter and Facebook, do updates every day to their platforms, right? So I think everything moves faster and faster, and technology will accelerate, and your ecosystem needs to be able to accelerate. That's one part of it. And another one I think that's coming up is the whole idea of partner-driven innovation, open innovation. So the boundaries will be more and more blurry going forward, and innovation will happen less and less inside of large organizations versus inside of networks that are very agile and that form to achieve a certain mission, and that's also a very important factor.
Mike, what do
Yeah,
you think?
I couldn't agree with Daniel more. I mean, the speed is we're gonna see faster challenges, more mission directed, and then yeah, open, wider audiences, casting really large nets. I think one thing, if you were to go kind of maybe 15, 20 years out, I mean, if you're looking at kind of visionary approaches, I think we are trending more towards a kind of a network of communities, a meta community, a super community, if you will. So we
Hmm.
have, this kind of maker movement. We also have, hackers, and they're starting to merge and collaborate. We have people who are just really big into solving problems. The people who participate in incentives community. So we have a lot of disparate communities that are starting to work together in a cohesive fashion. And then that's one of the goals of Catalyst, and I see that really trending in the future. We have a lot of customized content, customized purchasing. In the future, we could have customized job types. You could find out what you're good at
Huh.
and what you like through competing in some of these different challenges structured under a integrated approach. So, I think it's really exciting, though. I think we're looking, at least from the government perspective, a little bit more to pay for performance approach, but overall, very exciting time to be in open innovation.
That is some really interesting stuff, especially thinking about, I love that idea of thinking about customized job types based off of kind of like helping to meet multiple missions based off of your particular skill set.
Well,
At
and
this
then
time,
I would add too that a lot of that is some of this is already happening. I mean, I could give a real specific example for those on the Top Coder platform. There's a score associated with how many challenges they win.
no.
A lot of companies are actually using that as a vetting or a benchmark, at least for offering interviews. So, things like that could be used. Basically, you have these ecosystems which are coalescing. How we use them will determine the future.
All right. Well, at this time, I'd like to open up the floodgates for our audience and let them go ahead and put in whatever questions they would like to see answered into the questions feed here, and we'll get the speakers to respond to them. And we've already got some coming in. So here's a question for you, Mike. If innovation likely takes 5 to 10 years in order to see a return, is there a commitment on the part of the government for that time period to see it through?
So, I would say some innovation might take 5 to 10 years to return. I think there's different scales, time scales. I think particularly for Catalyst, we're looking at a pretty short return, and that's why we're focusing on very rapid prototyping and quick time to market. But in terms of, so I can't speak for obviously all time periods and all funding opportunities, but I can say for Catalyst, we're looking at the 6 to 12 month time frame for time to market for finding that product market fit. And we're committed to supporting these folks through seed funding and ecosystem building.
Great. Here's a question that I feel like I hear a lot. Maybe, Daniel, you can answer this one. Do rewards play a role in incentivizing ongoing engagement in these innovation programs?
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think rewards are maybe the area which is mostly underestimated in terms of the impact it does have on such an ecosystem. And I think the way you reward everybody in this ecosystem is super important, from the people that find ideas to people who nurture ideas to people who grow ideas. I think I think you have to very much look into your reward system inside of your organization. And if you look at reward systems of successful companies, you can really see why that is, because they really find the right triggers that are important in a certain stage of an innovative development and that are incentivized in the right way, right? And incentivization is not only money, as everybody hopefully knows. It's a lot about recognition and other factors as well, being important, being in a certain, being kind of seen as a valuable contributor inside of an ecosystem. There's many different ways you can incentivize, but I think tying smart incentive systems to your innovation goal is an area that is usually um, the impact is usually underestimated, and companies should focus more on that.
Mike, you've got some incentives tied to the Sunshot program. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say we for on our end we call that staged capital. Our goal is to de-risk the technology development. So we tranche out the seed funding and then we evaluate it at every stage. And I think also too, ideation, I didn't mention, we collect the problems and then of those problems that eventually become prototypes and eventually win seed funding, on the back end, we look at those teams that won seed funding. We look at the problem that originally seeded that process, and we award them $1,000.
Hmm.
So on the back end, we award them a monetary amount to incentivize people to give good ideas. And I think the crowd ultimately determines what is a good idea. If you can take that product to market, then you should be at least rewarded for that.
One of the questions that just came in is oftentimes involving all stakeholders and getting buy-in and resources for an innovative idea takes time. So what advice do you have for moving forward on innovative projects that are time sensitive? Daniel, you want to start off there?
Yeah, that's obviously sometimes difficult. What can you do to accelerate the process, basically, right? Um, I think the most effective way is to break it down into smaller pieces. So so in terms of reaching a certain goal, what usually helps is if you stage it into smaller goals and then try to achieve these ones within a reasonable amount of time. What you can also do, what we've seen before, is you basically spin an idea out completely. So you really plant or you build it basically outside of the core organization, which is usually the most effective way to accelerate. So anything you take out of a large group and kind of give it a greenfield approach is usually accelerated, and then you obviously need just smart ways and mechanisms to integrate it back into the organization. But I think, yeah, I think maybe the most effective way would be spinning it out to accelerate, based on my experience.
Yeah, and in terms of speed, I think speed is often going to be a function, I think, bottom up as opposed to top down. If there is, a lot of momentum, if you put out a landing page and you get tons of traction, I think you can determine ripe areas for investment. If you go the top-down approach, then maybe you have to really stage and produce, or at least use timely incentives to accelerate that process.
Right. We had a question here that I'm sort of curious about, and I feel like is more in the public dialogue about innovation programs lately. It's with so many technologies that are based in the cloud and a lot of this innovation happening in software. What emphasis will be placed on security in that technology, or should be placed on security, I suppose, in that technology?
I mean, I can speak specifically for grid technology. That is a huge focus, and that's a huge focus of one of the portfolios of the Sunshot program, the systems integration portfolio. Yeah, once you have an interconnected grid, cybersecurity and grid security becomes paramount. So we're definitely taking a long, hard look at that, and we're interested in supporting technologies that will help us ensure a safe, connected grid.
Daniel, did you
Yeah.
ever get security questions for your innovation programs?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially if you talk about the new innovation wave around Internet of Things, industrial internet, however you phrase that. Um, if you have a lot of parts of the economy running basically without human intervention, you want that kind of very robust framework. So it's going to be a huge part of the ecosystem, and we see already a number of security accelerators being built here in the Bay Area, and also security programs starting worldwide. You see a lot of the venture capital companies focusing on security as a dedicated topic, especially around connected things, industrial internet, let's say. That's a very, very big topic. And sad but true, obviously, what always needs to happen sometimes is a major flaw and major incident before people react, right? We were always waiting for the big ones in mobile, right? I remember we had discussions like 7, 8 years ago with large mobile handset OEMs, and they said, well, where's that kind of where's the case where someone breaks into a mobile phone, steals content, and kind of we have a problem there, right? And it didn't happen for many years, and I mean today it's happening basically every week. So you need these instances sometimes in security to really shake people up and to find the investment budgets for it. But I think specifically around IoT applications, I think people are pretty aware that you need a very robust security framework.
Right. Here's an interesting question about basically education. What sort of skill sets need to be imparted to people at the collegiate level, or maybe probably even younger, to help instill this movement towards sustainable innovation for people who are going to enter the job market eventually?
So yeah, agile thinking,
Yeah.
agile processes. Yeah, I think just you can never be too flexible with your interests and your passions.
That makes a lot of sense. They're all going to have customizable job types in the future anyway, so.
Yeah, plus the idea of like instant prototyping as well, just trying things out, figuring out what works, the whole concept around lean development, customer development, I think is something which is already taught by many universities and is gaining more traction. And I think that's a second one, agile, and very much throwing out prototypes as early as you can and testing them in the market rather than building large, complex academic concepts.
We had a question here. Oh, this was a question for you, Mike. Where are the ideas and innovations that are selected for funding published in the Sunshot program?
Great question. So I'd urge you just to check out catalyst.energy.gov. The landing page right now, we're waiting to compile reviewer feedback on the video pitches, and we will announce who wins the prototype funding on December 19th. So that will be on our landing page at catalyst.energy.gov. You can check out all updates and details there. All the future roadshow engagements will be posted there as well. But to date, this will be our first of the staged awards, and then following that, we'll advertise for demo day. The demo day is set to be in the first 2 weeks of May. We're still deciding on a location.
There's that offline component that you were talking about.
Right.
I had a question here about how can innovation ecosystems be created and used by those in government? I guess the example that they were interested in was infrastructure development or climate change planning. And then how can those be integrated into public-private partnerships? It's a big question.
Yeah, I think that is a mission of a lot of prizes and challenges, including Catalyst, is to reimagine what we think of in terms of a public-private partnership. Sometimes just giving money to an individual can suffice. I think, if you really want to check out tons of challenges across multiple agencies, challenge.gov is really the database that keeps most of the active and some of the previously run challenges across all agencies. I think I'll just leave it there because I'm not an expert in every challenge. But yeah, I encourage you to check out challenge.gov, and you can find all the opportunities available.
Daniel, do you have an answer to that? I mean, I know that one of the things that you said is that partnerships, that in particular, are a way of sourcing innovative ideas and collaborating. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think we haven't been involved in that area, to be honest.
No,
So
not so much.
nothing smart to add at this point in time.
I guess I would add one thing that a lot of people are trying to do across government is the transfer of IP or the commercialization of IP. A lot of agencies have aggregated large IP portfolios through investments in national laboratories. And there are just currently a lot of different efforts trying to sift through that IP and find folks who are interested in licensing or commercializing that IP. So a lot of that lab to market type of trend is definitely alive and well in different agencies. And if you're interested in that, challenge.gov.
Well, and I guess that this question is a perfect follow-up is, are there limits to the scale of government incentivized innovation? And how can we scale up?
Interesting, because I think so. Scale in terms of like reach, or scale in terms of dollar amount, scale in terms of support. I think there are some kind of loose limits on total prize incentives that can be offered without Secretary of Department of Energy approval. But in terms of reach or scaling in terms of touching individuals, I think there really is no limit. We're looking to reach as many possible people as we can, and I think NASA is an agency that's had some great success with finding solvers to very difficult space-based problems in very unexpected places. They have the Asteroid Grand Challenge. They currently have 10 opportunities right now where individuals and citizens can be involved in solving some very difficult challenges in detecting asteroids. So really no limit.
I have an interesting question here. I think we probably only have time for one more, so I'm gonna ask it, and it's about how for something to be truly innovative, industry observers often scoff at those ideas. Sometimes it has to be almost ridiculous when it's first introduced. So how do you sell an idea or commit to an innovation that a lot of people might find something scoffable at the outset? Daniel, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, that's a tricky one, right? Because I think if you are in an area like the Bay Area, people are kind of looking for that and are even kind of tuned to find things which are off the stream and which are kind of weird and are different and are contrarian, right? So here in an ecosystem like the Bay Area, this is much easier to do. If you take this into a corporate context, it is very it's very complicated. I think you have to really work on your storyline and messaging, and in the best case, you do have a management team that is actually able to take a certain amount of risk and to see the challenge, right? So I think it's a lot about how you storytell, and it's a lot about how you can convey the organization that if you don't move into this area, there's also a downside, right? I think
Right.
that's really the most powerful thing to proposition. You can say you can stay where you are, but then this and this is going to happen, and it's going to eat up 25% of your market. So you have to do these kind of bets in order to protect yourself. So I think storytelling and kind of making aware of the downside would be my first recommendations.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Innovation as a form of competitiveness is a good, I think, an enterprise level argument. I would also say if you are, an inventor or a tinkerer or a maker or something, start start small. I mean, startup mentality and startup logic has definitely pervaded a lot of people's thinking. Have some success at a small scale and scale up. And then I think also, maybe just find the wrinkle, right? Before you propose the all-out innovation, find that little thing of differentiation. I mean, if you look at Elon Musk, he didn't say he was going to colonize Mars first, right? He started by just trying to produce a reusable rocket, right?
Yeah.
And then you slowly make progress to the grand vision. So I think there's plenty of examples of doing that worth emulating.
All right. Well, thank you. Those are lots of good stuff to think about. You both have really great programs. Thank you for sharing. And once again, this recording will be available to those who attended or registered. And if you have any questions, feel free to forward them to jessica.day@ideascale.com. Thanks a lot for joining, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Daniel.
No problem.